you have the majority of leaves. It's not a question of whether you have the majority of leaves or not. You have, let's say, see this one, I don't have the majority, Mr. Haber, right? Over here, Mr. Haber. This one, I don't have the majority of leaves. I'm missing there's too many leaves missing. But this one, most probably, I have the majority of the leaves. These leaves are dried up, let's say. There's still some green here, it's not white. But let's say these would be white. But if the top three leaves, that's how Rashi learns, are green, they're moist, then it's kosher. That's what he says. Then it is kosher. As long as these three leaves are on the top of each of the three, you need a minimum, you need three myrtle leaves, you need three myrtle sticks, three stems, you need three hadassim. You have three hadassim, even if the majority of the leaves are dry, but the top three leaves on each of the three hadassim are moist, so that's the chidush. This opinion says that the hadassim are still kosher. So the chidush is that even though the majority are dry, now as long as you have, because the top is going to be the most important, and as long as the top of each of the three hadassim are moist, they're nice and green, then the hadassim are still kosher. Okay, let's see in the Gemara. We got up to yesterday. We are on 33a. 33a, Lema Ketanai. 33a2 on the right side. Lema Ketanai. Let us say that this is a matter of Machloket Tanoim. What's the issue that we're talking about? We said yesterday that if a lulav, we spoke about you have hadassim. We said if a hadas was the top of the hadas, the branch itself, the twig itself, the stem itself got cut, right? We said if the top of the hadas, if it gets cut, what do we say? It's no good. If it gets cut, it's no good. But we said if a berry goes ahead and it grows, and a berry grows on top, and it covers up the cut that was on top of the hadassim, what do we say? We say that it's good, right? Because it covered up the cut, and let's say we understood that if it's cut on top, that means it's not pretty, it's not beautiful anymore. There's a special halacha that has to be hadar, that applies to both the etrog and the hadassim and the aravot, and therefore, as long as it was the berry came in and covered it up, it's good, right? That's what we said. Morning, Simon. That's what we said. That's what we said yesterday. Now, the question we had yesterday, the discussion in the Gemara yesterday, was if you had a hadas and the top got cut off before Yom Tov, but the berry only grew on Yom Tov itself. And that means when Yom Tov came, this hadas was rejected, was not kosher for the mitzvah of hadassim. And now the question is, if subsequently it became the hadas, Money Max will come back. If the berry came back to the hadas, do we say that if it was, even though it was rejected at the onset of the Yom Tov, do we say that it still could come back and be fit to be used? Meaning, we said by korban, we said by an offering, if you slaughter an offering and then something happened that it was not fit to bring the offering. We said, example, let's say the mizbeach, the altar was damaged, and therefore you couldn't bring the offering. So therefore the offering was rejected from being brought. Then the mizbeach is fixed. We say you can't bring that offering. Once it was rejected from being brought, it's rejected. So we want to know what is the status by a mitzvah, not just an offering. Would there be a similar halacha by a mitzvah or not? That was the question that we had yesterday. So now the Gemara wants to say, let us say that this issue is a matter of dispute by early rabbis. Where was the case? That's where we're starting now, Max, on 33a2 on the right, Lema Ketanai, bottom paragraph. Let us say that this is a matter of dispute of early rabbis. What was the case? We had a braita. Ava v'laktan. What happened was the guy, you had your hadass had more. We said if it has more berries than leaves, what do we say the halacha is if there's more berries than leaves? That it's no good. You gotta have more leaves than berries, right? If berries grow on the hadass, and if you had more berries than leaves, what are you supposed to do? So before the holiday, you're supposed to go before Yom Tov. You're supposed to go in and take off the berries. You're not supposed to take off the berries on Yom Tov, correct, Mr. Haber? But then the Gemara says, what happened? The Braita says, Avav v'loktan. You went ahead and you didn't follow the law. Let's say you didn't know the law. You went ahead and you took off the berries on Yom Tov. Can you use that hadass? And when the Yom Tov came, this hadass was rejected because it had the berries on the hadass. Can you use the hadass for Yom Tov now that you remove the berries on Yom Tov? That's the question we had in the Gemara. So we have a machloket, the Gemara says. Ava v'loktan. Max, you have the case? What's going on over here? Yeah. Got it clear? So Ava v'loktan, the katan. You went in and you took off the berries on Yom Tov. So pasuk. The first opinion says it's pasuk. Divi Rabbi Elazar ben Yad Tzadok. Elazar ben Tzadok says that this hadass is invalid to be used. Even though, what do you mean? It looks beautiful, Rabbi. There's no berries left. But it's still invalid. Now, what's the reason? We'll see in a moment. The Chachamim say you could use this hadass for the mitzvah. The Chachamim say you could use it. Even though when Yom Tov came in, it was invalid. Savruah, the people in the Beit Midrash, the rabbis who wanted to suggest that this dispute is arguing in the idea of whether something that's rejected on the onset of Yom Tov remains rejected or not. The Kuli Yalma, all the rabbis of the Braita, which are Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Tzadok, hold lulav ein serech eget. Remember, we have a famous discussion. You have to tie the aravot and the hadassim to the lulav, or you don't have to tie the hadassim and aravot to the lulav. We tie it because of beauty. But technically, if you were to hold the hadassim, if I would go ahead and hold the hadassim aravot, I would hold it like this, not tied to the lulav. Technically, it's still good. We say it's not. We hold it does not have to be tied. It's tied because we want to beautify the lulav, but it's not an integral part of the mitzvah. But that's what the Gemara is going to be going back. It's going to use this discussion. It's going to play a big role. So the Gemara says everybody. And this is a matter of dispute. There is a rabbi that says that you must tie the hadassim and their avot to the lulav. If you don't tie it, you lose out on the mitzvah, so to speak. So the Kuli Alma, the Gemara is thinking that everybody holds lulav ain't serech eget. You technically don't, Simon. If there's any coffee, Simon, I think Mr. Okay, because Mr. Haber is looking for a nice, good cup of coffee. Everybody holds lulav does not need eget. Lulav doesn't have to. You don't have to tie it to the lulav. Now, and if the imtim saloma serech eget. And if you think that the Chachamim and Rabbi Elazar hold you do have to tie it to the lulav, nevertheless, there's another issue. Lo yafinan lulav misukkah. We don't learn lulav from Sukkah. Now, regarding what law? The ksiv ba by Sukkah it says tasev velo min ha'asur. There's a special halacha that says that when you make a sukkah, we mentioned it yesterday. You have to make it a sukkah. Your action has to be making the sukkah kosher. Not that the sukkah was made in a not kosher fashion, and then indirectly it becomes a kosher sukkah. It's not about the final product. In life, sometimes people just look about the final product, but here it's about the process. You could have a sukkah, but if it wasn't made in the kosher fashion, in a certain fashion, it's not kosher, even though it has all the qualities of a sukkah. It has schach, it has walls, has the height. But if, let's say, we gave you the example, you have a whole pile, make believe this is a whole pile of straw, okay? A pile of straw. Is that a sukkah? There's no sukkah here. It's a pile of straw. From the ground to, I got 6 feet of straw, 6 feet by 6 feet of straw. 6 feet high, 6 feet wide. That's not a sukkah. What is it? It's a pile of straw. But if I go in and I dig inside the pile, let's say this is the top of the, this whole bima is the pile of straw. And I dig from underneath here. I leave the top, I leave the walls, but inside I dig out. So I dug out, I made a hole, and now I left the walls of this pile, but I dug out, I dug out right over here. I dug out this area, and I have the size. I have 10 tefachim high. I have, let's say, 40 inches high, and I got 7, 14, 20, 28 inches wide. I got the size of a sukkah, but I didn't make the sukkah. I didn't make the schach. I didn't put on the schach to make it kosher. The schach, now it became schach. This cover, now what is the schach? This tabletop, so to speak. Well, this top, which is straw, let's say, is now the schach of the sukkah. But did I put on the schach? Did I make the schach with my action? Or it became automatically schach by doing something else in some secondary area? Now this became schach. So it was already made, but when it was made, when this cover was made, it was made not in a kosher sense because it was the cover of a pile. It was part of a pile. So that's called taseh. You have to chag sukkot taseh locha. You got to make the sukkah in a kosher. Not that it's already made in an invalid fashion, where like the schach was already made in not a kosher fashion, and now it's become made. Is that clear?
So yeah, we can't follow it out, but if we do that fully after
after I hollow it out, and then I go ahead and I pick up the top of the sukkah. I pick up the hay, and now I put it down. Then I am doing it. Then I am making the cover. Then that'll be good. But if I just leave the top as is, I don't touch the top. I don't touch the ceiling, right, Simon? And then I just go and hollow out the inside. That's no good. Now that's a halacha that Torah writes that pasuk by the sukkah. Does that halacha also extend to all the other 4 minim, the hadasim, the aravot, and the other species of the lulav? Would we also invalidate it? Excuse me, by if it's done in such a fashion? What would that mean? If I hold that I need to tie the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav, if I hold that way, I hold that that's an integral part of the mitzvah. But when I tied it in an invalid way. Why? Because I had too many berries. I had more berries on this hadas than I had leaves. So then when I made it, it was made, meaning, and the making is by tying it together. Is the way you would make this lulav and a hadasim aravot. So when I made it in an invalid fashion. And then I removed the berries. So by removing the berries, now automatically, now without me doing it, when I made it, it was made not kosher, because I made it with the berries on. I tied it, I made my full double knot with it, the berries on. Then I did an action on the side that I removed the berries. Now automatically it should become, I didn't retie it. So do we say that it's invalid because it was made not in a kosher fashion? When I made it, it was still with the berries on. I tied it with the berries on. So the Gemara is saying that what the rabbis are holding now is that everybody would hold that this law of taseh v'lo manaseh only applies, the stringency is only by the making of the sukkah. But the making of the other species, if you made it in a way that it's not kosher, but at the end, the final product is kosher, like that would not invalidate the hadassim and the aravot. The fact that it would be tied with the berries on. There has to be some other thing playing a role. As long as you take the berries off. Took the berries off, you're good. So, but what would be the issue? The issue would be there's some other issue that's playing a role here. So what is the issue here? The Gemara says. The Gemara says, my lab. So if that's the case, my lab, one of the rabbis bothered. What is the argument here when the berries were on the Hadass? When Yom Tov entered, there was more berries, and then subsequently you went ahead and you removed the berries. So what's the argument, whether it's good or not? So the Gemara says, the man de pasul, the one that says that this Hadass is invalid is because Sava, he holds, Amrinan, we say, Yesh dichui etzel mitzvot. That by mitzvot, it's pushed off. That once it's pushed off, once it's rejected, it's no good. By the way, you turn the page, we're now on 33A3. Right? The arguing is now this was rejected at the time, when Yom Tov came, the berries were on, it was rejected, it was pushed away. So once it's pushed away, now that you took the berries off, so this opinion was saying, this the Gemara is suggesting that that's why he's saying it's no good, because we say yesh dichui etzel mitzvot, that once it's pushed away from the mitzvah, it's rejected from the mitzvah. But Yom Tov came, the mitzvah is here, and it was rejected. Because what did we reject? It's not fit because it has too many berries. So we say once it was rejected from use for the mitzvah, it's rejected completely. But the Chacham say no. Sava lo amina dichlei etzam mitzvah. We don't say once it's pushed away, it's pushed away. It's pushed away for the time that it's pushed away. Yom Tov entered, too many berries, you can't use it. Now somehow the berries came off. Somebody, somehow he picked off the berries. He didn't realize he can't take off the berries. Now it's kosher. So that's what the Gemara wants to suggest, that the early rabbis, the rabbis of the Breita, are arguing on this issue that we were bringing up, that Rabbi Yirmiyah had the question of what's the law by such a thing. The late rabbis asking the question, we found an apparent Breita, an apparent statement that seems to indicate that it's an early dispute. And if it's a good match, that means the Chachamim are the position that says that it's kosher. And if the Chachamim say, I hope it's ready by now, Simon. The Chachamim say that it's kosher. Good morning, Isaac. And if the Chachamim say it's kosher, that should indicate the law. Because the general rule is you go like the Chachamim, right? The Chachamim are the majority. Torah says, Acharei Rabim Lahatot. You go after the majority. So they're the majority. That class, you're going to be learning this Gemara with your grandson one day, Mr. Ralph. You have a mitzvah to teach Torah to your grandson. Yom Tov. That's the first opinion.
You can use it.
So we have so the Gemara wants to suggest there are two different opinions here, whether it's good or not good. Could you use this hadass once the berries were removed? And the Gemara is suggesting during Yom Tov, that Yom Tov, right, Mr. Haber? They removed the berries on Yom Tov, and we have a machloket, a dispute in the Breita, whether you could use that hadass or not. Now, the Gemara wants to say, what's the reason behind the machloket, right? Law, case, reason. What's the reason? What's the rationale? Why did the Chum say it's kosher? And why does Rabbi Elazar say it's not kosher, it's hadass? What's wrong with the hadass? You don't have the berries on it anymore. It's more leaves than berries. So the Gemara is suggesting, and the Gemara is saying, the reason why he holds it's not kosher, it's not because you made it in a not kosher fashion, because you made it with the berries on, and it was made in an invalid fashion. Because he holds you don't need to make the lulav with the hadassim. It's not about it's not an integral part. You have to make it. Something for you to do over here. There's nothing for you to do. You don't have to tie it. And even if he holds that you have to tie it, he holds that there's no invalidation by making the hadass in an improper way. Hadass, it's all about the net. It's all about the bottom line. It's not about the process. Sukkah, it's about the process. Sukkah, you can't just have a kosher, have all of everything of a sukkah if it wasn't made the way you're supposed to make it. So therefore, the Gemara is suggesting that they're arguing in what? They're arguing in this concept. Whether when a mitzvah is rejected, when it was rejected from being a mitzvah, used as a mitzvah, does that rejection remain permanent, or or if something's rejected from a mitzvah, could come back? That is on a Musar idea, you could say, the concept we find tshuva. You could be rejected. A person could be doing bad things. He's rejected from certain things because he created he's distant, and you can come back. Okay. But here the question is regarding the mitzvah: can you use this mitzvah? Can it be used again once it's rejected? Is it appropriate? Is it allowed to be used again? So the Gemara said, "Lo, that is not the case. The fact that they're arguing that not in this matter does not necessarily mean that they're arguing about what you think they're arguing about. You're suggesting that they're arguing about your question, but they're arguing about perhaps they're arguing about something else. Maybe the Kuliyama lo aminan mitzvot. Maybe all the rabbis, all the members of the Braita hold, we don't say once you're pushed away from a mitzvah, you're pushed away. No. You're pushed away as long as you're pushed away. Once you come back, once everything is fixed, you're fine. But over here, the melaf lulav me Sukkah kamiflagi. Can you learn lulav? Do we learn lulav from Sukkah? What does that mean? That means this concept that it's about the process. How you make the item. Did you make it in a kosher fashion, or just it was made kosher without you making it kosher? Maybe that's what they're arguing. That one opinion holds. We have a precedent. What's the precedent? By Sukkah, the precedent is that it has to be made kosher. You have to when you put on the schach, that's making the sukkah kosher. Not that the schach was put on and it was not kosher, then something else happened somewhere else in the sukkah, and that automatically makes the sukkah kosher. No. The same way there's this law by the schach, they have to make it kosher. So too the Gemara is saying that the question is, do we learn the other 4 species from the schach, or we don't? You remember we had the same issue regarding hadar, beautification, right? We had the discussion. The Torah says by etrog, 3/8 hadar has to be beautiful. But that law of beauty, where the Torah is telling us is an integral part of the mitzvah of etrog, does that also apply to the hadassim and the aravot and the lulav, or is that a special halacha by the etrog? And the difference would be, what about if a lulav is dried out? The lulav is that's what dried out. Would it be invalid or not be invalid? Would depend on that discussion. So the same way there is a discussion, do the other species have the same law of the sukkah of the etrog? There's a similar question: does the other species have the same law of the sukkah? We have a law by sukkah. Sukkah is not the 4 species. Sukkah is a separate mitzvah in the mitzvah of the holiday of Sukkot. They have the building of the sukkah, the making of the sukkah. So that special law that we have in the making of a sukkah, that it has to be ta'aseh, you have to make it kosher, not that it becomes kosher by itself without you making it kosher. Do you have that same law applied to the Hadassah Ravas as well? So that's what the Gemara says. That the male of lulam is sukkah miflagi. The Marsava, one rabbi holds Yafina lulav sukkah. We learn lulav in sukkah. That's the rabbi that says that it's invalid. You know why it's invalid? Because you went ahead and when you made it not in a kosher fashion. You tied the hadassim to the lulav with the berries on. And now, so you didn't make it kosher. That was not, you didn't make it in a kosher fashion. You removed the berries, but that's no good because you didn't make it in a kosher fashion. Umasava, and one rabbi holds, lo yelfinan lulav misukkah. You cannot learn lulav from sukkah. One holds that you don't learn lulav from sukkah. So this law applies by sukkah, but it doesn't apply by what? By lulav, right? It doesn't apply by lulav, and therefore it will not be invalid, right? That's what the Gemara wants to say. So now, regarding mitzvot in general, regarding mitzvot in general, it will come out that we can't learn out from this case to all mitzvot, because maybe everybody holds that by all mitzvot you don't push away. Once it's pushed away, maybe it could come back. But here there's something else happening here that's invalidating it, right? That's what the Gemara says. Good morning, Mark. Morning.
Morning.
Because the morning, that's more the preparation of the mitzvah. It's not the, when you prepare your Shabbat candles, or you cut, when you cut the etrog, it's the same thing. When you're cutting the etrog, the mitzvah is to dwell in a sukkah. The mitzvah, I mean, yes, part of you have to build a sukkah in order to dwell in a sukkah, but the bracha is on the leishev basukkah. Chag HaSukkot, you have to make the sukkah, but you have to, but sukkot teishvu, it does say you have to make the sukkah, but the main mitzvah is to live. If a guy goes ahead and he makes the sukkah from sukkot, he doesn't live in the sukkah. He's not going to give him credit for the mitzvah, but he prepared, but he didn't really, the mitzvah is mainly to dwell in the sukkah. Okay. Now, the Gemara says the following. The Ibayit Ema. Mark, just to bring Mark up to date, we're discussing a question when you have a mitzvah, when something is was rejected from being used as a mitzvah, and then subsequently something happened that now it's fit for the mitzvah. Do we say that it could be used, or do we say once it was rejected from the mitzvah, it remains rejected from the mitzvah? We gave the case of the Gemara is you have hadas, you have hadassim that had more berries than leaves. So before Yom Tov, you're supposed to cut off the berries. It's not called it was rejected from the mitzvah because the mitzvah didn't kick in yet. Because the mitzvah is when on the Yom Tov, that's when the mitzvah kicks in. So you could cut off the berries before Yom Tov. But the question was, the guy did not cut off the berries before Yom Tov, and he cut off the berries on Yom Tov. And when Yom Tov came, already was rejected from the mitzvah because the berries were on. Now the question of the Gemara is, now that the berries were removed, would he have a right to go ahead and use this hadas? Would this hadas be kosher or not? So the Gemara wanted to say that we found that it's a machloket, it's a argument of early rabbis. The Gemara wanted to say, because the Gemara found that we have an argument, this case of the berries were cut off, on Yom Tov. We had a machloket, we had a dispute about that, whether it's kosher or not kosher. So, I mean, the original case of Rabbi Yirmiyah, you see, Rabbi Yirmiyah gave a similar case. What was his case was? His case was, when he asked his question was, you had a hadas that the top of the hadas was cut off. We said if the top of the hadas is cut off, it's invalid, right? The twig is cut, it's invalid. But if a berry grows before Yom Tov and covers up the cut, it's kosher. Because it's not lacking the beauty anymore. An open cut lacks its beauty. But if the berry only came on Yom Tov, only grew on Yom Tov, so that was the question Rabbi Yirmiyah wanted to know. Since when Yom Tov entered, this Hadass was rejected because of the cut on top, do we say that now that it grew the berry, do we say that now it's you could use it for Hadass? Or do we say no, that since it was rejected from the mitzvah when the Yom Tov came, once rejected, remains rejected? That was the question. And the Gemara wanted to prove it from this early argument. If a person violated the rabbinic law of not cutting the berries off on Yom Tov, he had too many berries on the Hadass, and he cut the berries off on Yom Tov, whether he could use that Hadass or not. Even though when Yom Tov came, it was also rejected. One case was rejected because the top of the Hadass was cut off. There was no berry that covered it. And one case, it was rejected because there were too many berries. So the Gemara is comparing both cases. And the Gemara wants to say, the same way there's a dispute over there, the dispute between of those rabbis of whether the Hadass that had too many berries at the onset of Yom Tov, it was not able to be used at the onset of Yom Tov, and you remove the berries on Yom Tov, the same argument over there would apply to the case when the berry came in on Yom Tov. And the Gemara is suggesting that the rabbis are arguing about the fact of whether a mitzvah, once it's rejected from a mitzvah, does it remain rejected. That's what the Gemara wanted to say. What the Gemara is, and the Gemara now is rejecting that idea. The Gemara is saying no proof. Maybe those rabbis are arguing about a different issue. Nothing to do with whether something that's a mitzvah that's rejected remains rejected. What's the issue? So now here the Gemara says another, Ibayit Ema, or if you want, I'll suggest another reason, an explanation of what the rabbis over there are arguing about. The Lulav Sarach Agad, if you hold that a lulav needs to be tied, if you hold they have to tie the aravot and the hadasim to the lulav, which we said is a matter of dispute, whether it's a biblical responsibility for you to tie. Good morning, Gary. Whether you have to tie the hadasim and the aravot to the lulav or not. But if we hold that you have to tie the hadasim and the aravot to the lulav with a real good tie, the kuli alma, then everybody would hold the alfina lulav me Sukkah. Everyone would learn the law of lulav from Sukkah. Which law? That the same way you have to make the Sukkah. When you make the Sukkah has to be made in a kosher fashion. Not that you made the Sukkah in a not kosher fashion, but then subsequently you did an indirect action and now the Sukkah became kosher. Like we gave the case just to bring Gary and Mark up to date. If this would be a pile of straw, we gave the case. Pile of straw is not a Sukkah, it's a pile of straw. If you cut out the inside and you left the top, and you left the walls and you left the top, now you have, let's say you have the dimensions of a Sukkah, but when the schach was made, the top cover, it was not made in a kosher fashion because it was made as a pile of straw, which is not a kosher Sukkah. Now you cut underneath, and now you remain the top remained, but you didn't make the Sukkah kosher. Your action didn't make it. You didn't do a direct action to make the schach kosher. So therefore, the same way that would invalidate a Sukkah, if you made your hadassim and aravot not in a kosher fashion, let's say you tied it. If you hold, you have to tie it to the lulav. If you tied the hadassim with all those berries on the hadassim, we said if there's two more berries than leaves, it's not kosher. So if you tied it, Gary, with too many berries on that hadass, and you tied it to the lulav, and then after you tied it, and then you cut off the berries, but now you just cut off the berries. Now you're going to say, Rabbi, it's good. I have a proper hadass. But when you made the hadass, it wasn't kosher. Because when you tied it to the lulav, it had too many berries. So now that you did, if you went ahead, untied it and retied it, okay, then it's kosher. But you didn't untie it and retie it. You just removed the berries. Oh, now Rabbi, it's kosher. But you didn't make it kosher. When you made it, you didn't make it in a kosher fashion. That wouldn't be good. But what's the issue here? They're arguing whether lulav has to actually be tied. You have to tie the hadassim and their ravos to the lulav. So the Gemara says, and plukta dehani tanai. And they're arguing in the following, like we find, this is an argument of other Tanaim. The Tanya, we learned in a Braita morning. We found lulav bein a good bein ain't a good kosher. A lulav, whether it's tied, whether you tied that dasim and ravot to the lulav or you didn't tie it, it's kosher. That's the first opinion, and that's, by the way, the halacha, that we technically do not need. Meaning, it's not an integral biblical law to tie their das v'ravot to lulav. It's a different law of beauty. You want to beautify the mitzvah, but it's not but you don't have. It will be kosher without it. My time, but however, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yehuda says a good kosher. It's only kosher if the hadasim and the ravot are tied to the lulav. Ain't a good if it's not tied. It's pasul. It's invalid. My time is Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? So the Gemara said, and we'll see tomorrow, we'll go into the machloket of what's the argument of whether you have to tie the dasim and the ravot to the lulav, or you don't have to tie the dasim and the ravot. We're going to see it's based on biblical sources, and therefore, and that's what they're arguing on. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow on this Gemara. It's a very complicated Gemara. You know, there's something you used to hold, you know, they say the first hold cup, you have to hit with your head focused on the backs of the forth. Okay, Mark, we miss you. But at least we got you on the screen. We'll take what we could get in life, as they say. Thank you very much. All the best.
Take care, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you. See you soon, Mark.
How come they don't talk about when you could cut the berries? Sounded like you could have cut them on Yom Tov.
No. So the Gemara said you can't. The Mishnah said you only have to cut them before Yom Tov. It said if the guy violated, he was not allowed.
So
how about
Chol Hamoed?
Yeah, Chol Hamoed, I would say Chol Hamoed, you would be able to cut the berries off the hadass. We're not cutting. We're not going into the tree, into the field, cutting the berries.
No,
but
you're
allowed to cut the berries. That wouldn't be an issue. Ralph, you had a question, Ralph? What? Okay, very good. Okay, but you should cut the berries off before the holiday.
Gotcha.
Okay, we'll see you soon.